So basically, China has been progressing for 40 years while the West has been declining for 40 years. And this is the result of the mistakes of the ruling elite in Western countries.
Over the years, negativity has been the undertone of how China is depicted in Western media. Is such negativity truly rooted in the insecurity triggered by China's rise? Since the advent of the Trump 2.0 era, America has exacerbated escalating hostility toward China, whether through tariffs, technology restrictions, or even higher education policies. What, then, is the underlying logic behind shaping China as an enemy in public perception?
Some countries are simply struggling to compete. And one of the things that they're really fundamentally struggling with is, what if China's system, what if its political system, its economic system, its industrial system, what if these are all simply better models? How do you deal with that from a European perspective or an American perspective, right? And it's very difficult for those systems. And this creates the potential for conflict, where we would see, therefore, these countries then having to have no other choice but to try to demonize or point their finger at China, because they really have no other answer.
In recent years, with rising economic inequality, racial tensions, and political polarization, the internal divisions in the United States have reached unprecedented levels. At this critical juncture, certain politicians have shifted focus to China. By positioning China as an enemy, they aim to divert public attention while drawing false parallels between Chinese social issues and America's own challenges, a deflection tactic to hide away their domestic failures.
So basically, China has been progressing for 40 years while the West has been declining for 40 years. And this is the result of the mistakes of the ruling elite in Western countries. Basically, what they did is they caught all the wealth at the top. The money has stopped trickling down to the middle class and to the lower classes. And now the result is, what we see in the media: the decline of the West. The infrastructures are crumbling. The people are getting poorer. More and more people are going on social benefits. The social benefits are getting lower and lower. Whereas, as opposed to China, where everything is still not perfect, but everything is so much better than 40 years ago.
For what we see now, the US doesn't seem to slow down the game against China. Under the 2025 budget year, USAGM has set up a new entity, the USAGM Accelerator, which prioritizes China-targeted news services. It serves to deliver factual and uncensored China-related content, targeting the 60 million Chinese diaspora worldwide.
But what I can define it as is there is an unnecessary and very risky narrative that continues to play out. And where we see it particularly play out in the United States is with this often barrage of anti-Asian and anti-Chinese hostility, whether it's something overt, like somebody being beaten up in a street, or whether it's something covert, this idea of, if I see someone walking down the street who looks Asian, I'll cross the street because I just simply don't trust or like that person. Those kinds of negative beliefs are so corrosive and so unnecessary in the 21st century.
There are sometimes misunderstandings. There are also sometimes intentional lies that aim to advance a specific U.S. political agenda. And all of these are taking place in this new information era, this hyper information era, where misinformation is always a risk. It runs in every direction. We see, for example, a lot of big companies that have their own interests, Google, others, who are using AI. The AI is, depends on or is able to utilize algorithms that tell people what they want to hear, but also tell people what others want them to hear.
As information barriers start to fall in the age of social media, the China threat narrative peddled by US-led Western media faces a crisis of trust. As many touched down on Chinese platforms and 47 countries gain visa-free access to China, more and more global citizens get the chance to see the real China. With information divides bridged, First-hand experiences grounded in facts will inevitably dismantle those constructed biases.
I think it was in 2024, it was more than 20 million foreigners who visited China. And if you look at social media, they're all recording themselves and showing how amazed they are about China, how China is so different from what they've been told. So I would say this propaganda in the West has been into overkill and it's kind of backfired a little bit. And so the Western people now are looking for something different about China. They want to hear more factual stuff. They don't want to hear the usual criticism.
We're all the same people regardless. Like, I feel like a lot of people get their perception of how Chinese people are or how the culture is through politics because of how Trump or any other politician tries to demonize or create a illusion of what China is. I grew up with adults saying how there was child labor in China and how, like, a bunch of other really outlandish statements. But now as an adult, you see all those are not true, those are false. And I hope going forward, we break down those illusions, we break down those misconceptions and prejudices against China and just look at China as what it is.
And the citizens themselves are finding out for themselves what is wrong in the US. I mean, the re-election of Trump, taking into account the previous term of President Trump, has to say a lot about the political situation, the political constructs of the US. And this is what most of the world is seeing now, that there is a flawed system in the US and it's having an impact in the US as much as it's happening in the world